But so
There we
hello
go.
everybody. We are live here for our 75th anniversary episode of the Prove It Live podcast. We have a very good show for you today. I've been away for a couple weeks due to vacation, due to travel ball tournaments, due to I don't know.
Really, those
stuff.
two things. Really,
Yeah,
those
well,
two
I guess
things.
it was that kind of just I guess that, right? That's
Yep.
what we've been. So Mike, what's how you been? What's
Good.
up?
So
Yeah.
I was, that's true. So 2 weeks ago, I was in Virginia, beautiful Williamsburg, Virginia. First time I had been there.
I've
I
never
was,
been to Williamsburg, Virginia. Is it nice?
it's gorgeous. It's
Yes.
beautiful. And, Colonial Williamsburg there, which they have this part of the town they basically live like it's the 18th century. And so, in fact, there's a church still active there that, has been visited by, and actually some of the members were George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, just two presidents right there. But yeah, everything's as the same as it was in the 1700s. People dress the way that, like, it's a whole village, a whole town. It's really, really cool. The whole shooting match, the whole kit and caboodle, as you will.
The whole kit and caboodle. Okay.
Yes, that's
good.
correct.
All right, that's good.
So that was, I was at a hotel. Didn't anyone knows hotel Wi-Fi not conducive to being able to live stream a podcast? So we missed that week. And the following week, you were on vacation.
Yes, I was I went and visited
Jersey Shore.
Snooki. Actually, was by the house there in Seaside Heights, New Jersey.
Yep.
But I did go to Pennsylvania. My folks are from Eastern Pennsylvania, Pottsville. For those,
that's where the plane landed, right?
No, that's in Shanksville.
Shanksville. So,
yeah, Pottsville is where they make Yinglings beer.
Okay.
Yep. So that's my parents are from that area, and we took in a Scranton Wilkes-Barre Railcats game with my kids, which was at a stadium for us Bostonians. I will describe it. I could sit in my seat with plenty of lateral room to shimmy.
Wow.
I could also place my legs down without slamming my tibias into the seat in front of me. And Mike, I could cross my legs without knocking out the person sitting in front of me.
That's amazing.
Which is impossible at the Garden, Fenway Park, and Gillette Stadium, where you
with the exception of the monster seats.
Oh, the monsters! Oh, I've never sat in.
Monster seats are great. They're like bar style. You can swivel. Yeah, that's just plenty.
Yeah, I haven't sat in the monsters. I'm not that cool. Yeah. But yeah, so
most people.
Here we are back. So, we got a good episode today, right? We got a burning. We'll get to it. Our topic today is going to be essentially lifting weights. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it ugly? Is it helpful? Is it damaging?
Or is there a depends in there?
Or is there a depends?
Depends.
So
yeah.
What's our top of the order?
So top of the order, I figure we'll talk a little bit about the All-Star game, the All-Star weekend, as they call it. It's not a weekend, right? So it's the home run derby on Tuesday night, and the was it Monday night?
Monday night.
Home run derby Tuesday night is the All-Star game on Tuesday night. And so a couple things about it. So first of all, for anyone that doesn't know or who even cares, the American League was triumphant over the National League. They won yet again. And it doesn't really mean anything anymore, Kevin, right? I mean, it's become a joke. One of the things that they did during the game is they have a lot of hot mics, right? They've got these players that are mic'd up.
And they might see the game. They mic the pitcher and the catcher up, which I thought was awesome. John Smoltz was calling pitches, which I thought was pretty cool.
Pretty okay. See, I take a different approach to that. Like,
okay.
You go back to the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, probably even 80s. They wanted to win that game. It was a big deal to win that game. It was just for pride.
Dude, didn't Pete Rose kill somebody at home plate? I mean,
yeah.
Right. I mean, I don't know if that guy ever played again, but yeah, now it's like the NBA. They all got the same agent. They all got the same press person. They actually had a red carpet. I don't know if you saw that. Like it's LA. They were coming. Everyone was coming dressed of red carpet to enter the stadium.
It's kind of, I mean, Ted Williams would talk about his greatest moment of all the home runs he hit, all the achievements he had. Yeah, it was hitting the home run that won the All-Star game. And, I do wish it meant more. It doesn't mean anything in any, this isn't obviously exclusive to baseball, but it's just completely meaningless. It's dumb. You almost wonder, like, why did they even play the game? And then of course the home run derby the night before, Juan Soto won it, second youngest to win it. Impressive to watch those guys launch baseballs for sure. It really is, right? But and I'll tell you this, there was more from watching, there's more pride that he had in winning that home run derby than it seemed than winning the actual All-Star game, from the
well,
winner.
because this goes back to it's all about me, right? Like, it's all about me. And speaking of
Yes.
all about me, we have breaking news.
Breaking.
Kyler Murray, all 4'6" of him. Speaking of, all about me, who held out during, the mini camp, just received a $230 million contract from the
Wow.
Arizona Cardinals, with $160 million of that guaranteed.
So that
Wow.
just encourages anyone else to hold out, right? I mean, he just
just
shows that it's
hold
actually
out.
worth it.
I haven't won anything. Haven't gotten my team to the playoffs. They make them. I don't think so, right? No, they didn't make the play. I haven't done a thing. But someone just gave me, for mediocre results, $160 million guaranteed. That means he will clear with that. After we did that salary thing, he'll clear about $90 million in his pocket. His kids, his kids' kids, his kids' 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 kids will never ever have to work again.
Yes, multi-generational wealth. And you're right. It's like, mediocrity is rewarded now probably more than ever, right? I mean, it's amazing. And one hand,
well, dude, look at the NBA. You go,
I
you're
know.
like 13th guy in the bench making 2.8 million, 9.6 million. Like, who are these guys?
It's absolutely crazy. You see it in baseball too. And look, you're in the big leagues, you're in the NBA, you're in the NFL, you're obviously among the very best of who can do that thing, play that sport.
We're here talking about paying to produce our podcast. So yeah.
Right. Yeah, right. Yep. But it is a bit ass backwards. I mean, if we're being honest, I mean,
of course.
I mean, some of these guys that played in like the 80s, late 70s, 80s, they're still around. I mean, looking at what some of the guys get paid now, it's got to be mind-blowing. I mean, I grew up the little part of Boston I grew up, just a couple streets down from me was a former Red Sox player, was living in a very, very, very modest house, had like I think a 9-year career, like that, played a while. Mm-hmm. But just different time. I mean, you had guys, back in the 40s, 50s, and even 60s, I believe, right, that had jobs outside of baseball, right? Season was over, you go start your regular job.
Well, I know you didn't watch all of it, but the first episode of The Captain came out. And of course, most of the first part of it was centered on Dave Winfield, believe it or not, who at the time signed this huge contract that at the time paid him just under $2 million a year.
Wow.
And it was the largest contract in sports at that time. That is pocket money now
absolutely
for like Juan Soto, who just turned down $450 million, almost $500 million.
Yeah.
Turn it down.
Yep. Could you imagine?
No.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine the state tax that comes up. Like, just
that's crazy. And look,
but again, we're the one who are penalized, right? Like,
that's it.
I just went to like that, minor league game. I spent $14 a ticket to sit 5 rows from behind the Yankee or Whalecat dugout. We got food, and I left there probably, all told, I spent maybe $125, but minus the little shirts I got afterwards. But to eat. Oh, it was less than $100 for the tickets, to eat, and have a good time.
Yeah,
you can't get into Fenway Park without dropping $60 to park, right? Before I even do anything. Yep. Plus the cost of the ticket. I mean, here and it's not even that, right?
Well, I can tell you this: I was just in DC. What's that?
We have 2 tickets here to see the Red Hot Chili Peppers at Fenway, and can you see what the price is?
No.
All right, so we're sitting in Loge Box 1. So I'm seeing the Red Hot Chili Peppers for $174.50 per ticket.
Oh yeah. So I was just in DC, right? So after our Virginia tournament, we took the kids to DC for a couple of days. They hadn't been there. Did the whole touristy thing, and And so I was looking of maybe we're going to stay one more night. We are thinking about it. And I was like, you know what? Let me see. You know, the Nationals are in town. You could sit in a box seat for the Washington Nationals for like $41, $41. Now that's pretty inexpensive, especially, you know, if you compare it
Oh
to
yeah,
Fenway.
I used to do some like getting consulting down in Clearwater, and
Yep.
you know, you could sit at the time. I went to a playoff game with the Devil. They're called the Devil Rays at that point, and the White Sox.
Offensive.
We sat in club seats. I think the tickets were $70, but all the food you could eat. There was like
Right.
you go into the thing. There was like a buffet of food in a bar. Like what the drinks were absolutely all the food and soda were part of the ticket price.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, to be clear, there's a happy medium here. Like I'm glad that it's not just because back then it was just the owners raking it in, right? And they weren't really sort of sharing the proceeds with the talent. And so, but it's getting so out of control that you have to pay the talent, but the owners are still going to make the profits they need to make. And so the result is, here in Boston, you go to Fenway Park, it's like I don't even know what it would be for a box seat. It's probably somewhere about $130 for a box seat.
Easy.
Which is crazy. Yeah. Yeah.
So
insane.
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you. We have another shirt on, and there's a new shirt here every podcast. And if you turn around, is that a Mark McGuire shirt? What do we got?
It is not. It is not.
It is not. Here we go. He's turning around. What do we have? What do we? Oh, the Ozzie Smith. Very nice.
The Wizard. The
Wizard. Very nice.
Yeah.
All right. That was nice.
My favorite, probably my favorite defensive player.
Sponsor, but they could be another Mitchell and Ness brand shirt. There.
It is. I love these jerseys. It's a very, very fine quality for reasonable money.
It's a nice looking shirt.
All right, so this topic sort of was prompted by a trend that you're seeing, right? And it's sort of related to
a very, very, very disturbing trend.
Right. And something that you mentioned on social media. I've known about this trend, of course. So why don't you tell us a little bit about
so the trend is I currently have and I've had probably a total of 6 or 7 of your players at your place alone, but not just your place. It's over, that have specific back related injuries to their pelvis, lower part of their back from lifting weights. Now, before everyone starts I am, as I've said on this broadcast numerous times, I am an enormous, Olympic lifting proponent. There's no better way to strengthen glutes, groin than deadlifts, which they've been doing deadlifts forever, lifting up boulders and putting them down, right? So, but your technique has to be absolutely perfect. So before we go into adolescence technique, I will tell you a professional person who I treated. His name is Rick Hahn. You may look him up. He was in the 2004 or 8 Olympics as a judo. He then spent after that, I saw him right after the Olympics, and then he spent after that training mixed martial arts. He was a very decorated fighter in the Bellator fighting system. So he would come to me, always be putting him back together. His back, it's working, first on his neck, but he kept saying, my back, this, that. So he was going somewhere to lift. I'm not sure if it was Joey's Gym and Pizza by the Slice, whatever it was. But again, it's all about how much, the number. So I have video of this somewhere. I will dig it up. I said, Rick, now this is an Olympic judokan who trained at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. Okay. I ran him through my squat test, which he failed miserably. Okay. We put him in a squat and I pushed him over with one finger. So this man's doing deadlifts, he's doing squats with completely poor technique, which he's had that technique forever. So imagine if he could actually do a proper squat, what his career may have looked like.
Right.
So that's an Olympic caliber athlete. Now rewind to our normal 13, 14, 15, 16, 17-year-old movement athlete. Zero in 28 years has ever come into my office and performed a perfect looking, posturally correct, kinesiologically correct squat. Yet they are thrown into strength and conditioning programs that are unsupervised most of the time, that are on this, thrown together on a Excel spreadsheet, and they're told to do with no one looking at their technique. And even if they're paying someone to look at their technique, most often that person does not know what a proper kinesiological squat looks like, and the most important movers and what should happen. And what happens is I've got kids with injured backs at 15, 16, 17 years old.
So let me interject too, just for a second. So because the immediate question could be, well, geez, Kev, what if these guys were never taught the proper way to squat? How come they were never taught? But as we know, it's not something you have to teach, right? Is this not something that that your body should functionally be able to do from the onset of your life?
Well, that's a great question. And you and I both have children, for better or for worse.
Yes.
And then whoever's listening has children knows that if from a 4-year-old or younger, we could take any object and throw it on the ground and have your toddler go over and pick it up. Do they bend from the waist and go and pick that up? Do they bend from the waist and kick their leg back like a golfer pulling a ball out of a hole? Absolutely not. They drop diaper or underwear to heels in a perfect squat, knees never moving forward, back perfectly straight. Pick up that object and give it to you.
Yep.
Or like my kids used to stay in that position, and I'm sure and play with blocks. Just stay in that position.
Yep.
So how do we go from a 4 and 5-year-old to, a 16-year-old who has no coordination to do a squat without knees coming forward, back rounding?
Athletes too.
Athletes.
Yeah.
Like just cannot do that kind of movement. Like, and people ask, well, what happened? Well, obviously our limbs got taller. They look at kids do, or mimic, right? So they look at you bending over to the dishwasher, right? You don't go down and squat down to load the dishwasher, right? And, as they get taller, they start to do things and the body changes and they, and they get out of sync. But a squat is a natural movement.
Let me stop you. Does it have anything to do with the fact, I feel like we've talked about this, that what we're doing right now. So like, just sitting so much, we sit down to eat, we sit down to drive, we sit down in school, we sit down at work, right? I mean, we have to be losing strength in our hips. Right?
Yep. So the same injury that these kids are coming in for, right? I call it the executive sitting injury. It's my new term. Maybe I'll trademark it. So what happens, we have 3 curves of our back, right? We have the inward curves at our neck and our low back are called lordosis. And we have that where our ribs are, a kyphotic curve. As we get older, that gets worse. So right at that lordosis, if we lay someone on their stomach, that curve should continue in this wave, right? And then come to their tailbone or sacrum, which is also a little bit of a kyphotic curve. So it's kind of like this little, little wave here. So what I'm finding is we get to L3 and boom, I hit what's called a speed bump. So L4 and L5 are pushed backwards, posteriorly shifted. So when that happens, the body goes into DEFCON 1. All right. So the pelvis now tries to adjust to support, because obviously our spine, dude, is this amazing thing where people can carry hundreds of pounds on their head. Like we can, when properly, we can put 800 pounds on a bar and not crumple. Right.
Right.
But that's when our spine is perfectly in alignment.
Right.
So once those 2 vertebrae come out, DEFCON 1 happens. The pelvis, so where our spine hooks into the pelvis, that's called your sacroiliac joint, that goes out. And if you've ever looked at the muscle anatomy, pretty much from your chest to your knees, every single muscle passes through that pelvis, all of them, pelvic floor, abs, glutes, groin, hamstring, all of these. So you can think of that, and we tilt this structure, all those muscles are going to go into DEFCON 1. Like they're just going to, like the body is in danger. We're going to latch on. So I see the same speed bump on someone trying to deadlift a bunch of weight where they're not moving correctly, or the executive sitting at their desk for 20 hours a day and go to get up, and that back is locked up because those vertebrae are pointed this way. And that's really what it comes down from. And it's the same fix. We got to get that alignment, get the glutes firing. But the executive is an untrained person, right? You know what I'm saying? Like the executive doesn't know how to move per se, right?
Right.
What pisses me off is I see a kid come into my office who's at a strength and conditioning center where someone's supposed to be watching them, and their first move to do a deadlift is to pull up from their chest. I want to go to that strength and conditioning center and beat the person to oblivion. Like, what are you doing? You're taking someone's money. And either you don't know, two things. You don't know or you don't care. There's no other option. That's it. And you're hurting people.
And just for people listening, you should be feeling your hamstrings and glutes first on a deadlift. Is that correct?
Well, so the old joke, I know it's terrible, it's tasteless, but it works for this. What do you call a guy with no arms and no legs at your door? Matt, right? So we have to pretend that we're Matt, right? This is the simplest way to get a picture in your brain of people listening. We have to pretend that we have prosthetic arms and legs. How do we make them move? Where does that movement come from? And it comes from our spine, right? So we're down in our deadlift position. It has to be belly button first because that's where that's the spine. If we got paralyzed, we can't move, right? So all movement has to come from the spine. You'll hear people talk about ground force. Immediately delete that, right? Because you don't have ground force until something starts the force to push into the ground. Okay. Yes, the ground gives equal and opposite force back, but all movement starts with the spine out, proximal to distal, proximal to distal. And when you start to move from your chest, which is habitual, you have skipped your glute, your pelvic floor muscles, your groin, your hamstring. And as you know, Mike, the body is always going to do what you tell it to do. Good thing. The body is always going to do what you tell it to do. Bad thing. What that means is your body is just about getting things done. It's like a stubborn Irishman. We're getting it done. We're going to run through the wall or not, right? We're getting it done, right? And that's what happens. Your body will do it. Here's 250 pounds of a deadlift. I'm going to lift it up, because I got to put that number on the board.
Yeah. I tell kids that too with the swing all the time. It's because your brain knows, you're in a batting cage, you're on a field, whatever, you have a bat in your hand, someone's about to throw you a ball, right? It's second is your brain already knows where you are, what you're doing, and what you're supposed to do when that ball's thrown. And I explain it as if like you've got almost like the military, right? And you've got like 4 platoons lined up. And the lieutenant commander or captain says, hey, let's get through that wall. And the first line doesn't move. The second line is going to go, well, all right, we'll do it. Get out of the way. Right. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to get through that wall, but going in order is really important. Right. And so it's so people don't understand how easy it is to do things incorrectly, especially when it's something reactionary, like hitting
100%,
because your brain just goes swing. And so getting the bat to the ball, there's so many ways to do it. And if you're not really, if you haven't trained it properly to create the right muscle memory, you really have to focus to make sure what's moving first is the correct movement.
And as you know, as you have seen, once the body is trained to move kinesiologically correct, you want to talk about your stats going through the roof, as you know, and you have seen.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk about increasing your exit velocity. Okay. Do a bunch of correct squats, right? train for a week, and this is, we talk about this. This is going to be in our bat speed program. Do functional exercise as well, and you're going to see those numbers explode. You don't have to do all of this crazy stuff I see on. Do functional movements. Sit down, stand up, do it a bunch of times, do it different speeds. Your body weight is plenty of resistance. You want more resistance? Get a band. But someone should not be doing Olympic lifting unless their fundamental movements are perfect, signed off by someone who knows what they're talking about, and then work from there. Because when we're talking about Olympic lifting, which I'm a proponent of, it has to be perfect. And I can tell you that the amount of people with perfect movement that has come into my clinic injured is zero, right? Because if you had perfect movement, you wouldn't be in my clinic.
Well, so that's sort of the question. So what happens when you do these movements, right? You are Olympic lifting without perfect movement. You get what, Kevin? You get what you're seeing every day, right? You get the coming, right? You get hurt.
Yep, you get hurt.
And so a lot of the same injuries. So can you talk about, because this is really important, because every baseball player out there that I know, they're going to squat. Most, depending on the age, most of them will deadlift. We're talking high school athletes, right? They're going to do these movements are not only things that they do, but they're things that they focus on, things that they know what their PRs are, they know their personal records, right? They're acutely aware of this stuff. So every high school baseball player that I know does these things, but this injury that keeps coming up, can you explain a little bit about what that injury is and why is that injury happening specifically?
So again, it's that last two vertebrae, that L4 and L5, that get pushed posteriorly because we're pulling up from higher in the spine, which sends those things backwards. And then that, I call it the unhappy triangle. Right below that is your sacroiliac joint. You can feel that by those two little dimples that are in your back. That's your sacroiliac joint. That triangle is what is often injured. Okay. So the biggest thing, what happens I see in a squat, are two things, and they're equal as far as amount. One, someone bends their knees first, which completely shuts off. Your knees translate forward. That completely shuts off your posterior kinetic chain.
Right.
No back extensors, no glutes, no hamstring. That's gone.
All quads.
Gone. Yeah, all quads.
Yeah.
And people think, well, a squat is a quad exercise. No, it's not. If you're feeling in your quads, you're doing it wrong. The next thing, which you have to keep that lordotic curve of your back. It has to stay curved. Your spine cannot lose any of its curve. It can't lose the curve of your neck, and more importantly, it cannot lose the curve of your low back. You have to hip hinge, which we've talked about, hip hinging, getting into the batter's box,
right.
But you have to keep that lordotic curve. What I see is people can keep it for about either, you get the really bad who can't keep it at all, but most people can keep it about halfway. Okay. And then they lose it as they try to lower halfway, because they don't have the coordination between hip flexion and extension, knee flexion, extension. The body can't figure out, I've just got to collapse like a slinky.
Right.
My knees are going forward. Oh crap. I've got it around my back, because it'll, come to a certain point, and where your torso. So your torso should be moving forward as your glutes are going backwards. They're a 1-to-1 ratio, but eventually you can't go any further. Your chest is going to be on top of your thighs, right? So what happens from there? You have to bend your knees down like a slinky. And I really became good at this. I had a woman who was a patient who was 6'8", okay, and 6'6" of her were her legs, right? So she get to a certain point and be, still this
Something
far
had to give.
This far from the chair. So you literally had to teach her to drop her glutes in space.
Yeah.
Right. And this is before we put 1 pound in her hand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Just for posture. I call that the toilet.
Just for posture. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Because I don't say it to be funny. Kids always think they get a chuckle, but if you're sitting in a couch, you can fall into a couch. But if you're sitting down like on a toilet seat, it's rigid. So you gotta hips back, chest goes forward to balance out. You keep that center, right? And that's what I see that a lot too with the kids, is like they can't find a center either, and they just, everything starts getting thrown off.
And that's a great example. I always tell this to people, that you should be able to choose to sit down.
Right.
I was like, what does that mean? That means if you're on your way down, I say get up, boom.
Yep.
Or
Right,
I say
up,
stop, like it's squat. Like I always say, you're playing defense on a 2-year-old. You're getting down, 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 and you're choosing, no matter what the height of the couch, the commode, you're choosing to sit down.
So what, because I know this throws things out of sequence, and that's really what we're talking about. And once things become out of sequence, you're asking muscles to do jobs that they're not supposed to do, et cetera. And that leads to injury. So what is the sequential motion that often is injured, or what's off, right? So if there's like a certain order, where does the break in the chain usually happen?
Yeah, great question. So not to pump my own thing, but my game test, we have a squat test, right? And again, I didn't write the book on kinesiology. I wish I did. It'd be a lot richer. Okay. When we talk about, we have to move again proximal to distal. So our glute has got to be going backwards as our torso goes forward. And as we're doing that, our knees will bend passively.
Right.
But our knees will bend with our femur bending backward, not our knee translating forward over the toes. That cannot be an active movement. If it does translate, it has to be passive, meaning it's doing that as a result of my glutes going backward and my torso going forward. So the best way, you should be able to go to a wall, or I wouldn't say a wall, like let's say a box, right?
Yep.
You should be able to go to a box, put your toes onto that box, up against the box, and do a squat without your knees coming forward to hit that box.
Okay, there you go. So in the tibia should basically essentially be 90 degrees, right?
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
And so once that starts going that way, you're in a bad
your
position.
Your knees should not translate forward in order to do that. Right.
And here's something I've learned from you in doing this too, and just learning with some of the injuries that these kids had, that a lot of times there's sort of the macro, right? Like you see a kid, his knees are going way forward, his heels even lifting off the ground. Like it could be so many things wrong. But there's others where it's a little bit more to the micro, the glutes. Okay. Mm-hmm. People think glutes, and they think that's a muscle, like a quad, right? It's not.
Yes, it is a muscle, but it has, it's a very complicated muscle.
And that is supposed to fire in order. And oftentimes
that is correct.
That does not happen.
In just the glute maximus, the thing we sit on, right? There's glute medius, glute minimus, but our big glute maximus, that big muscle in our back, or in the back of us that we're sitting on, has 3 parts, in my opinion. Okay. And those parts have got to work sequentially. First part is right at the top of the glute, right where the sacroiliac joint is. In most people, that's non-existent. Literally, that's not on. So that's stabilizer number 1. So for you hamstring stretchers out there, okay, stop stretching your hamstring. Okay, you've been stretching it for 30 years. It's not getting any looser. The reason why is because your glute is not functioning to stabilize your back, the upper part of your glute. Get on your belly and butt squeeze until your butt pops off. All right. So again, that should go, middle should go, and the bottom should go. So Mike, I have one of your kids here who's not on the table doing his butt squeezes right now as we speak. So he better do that right now. So upper, middle, and lower. Now, most people, if you look at someone laying on their stomach, and you've seen this, I say do a glute contraction, you're going to see the opposite happen. You're going to see the bottom of the glute, middle, and then nothing in the top. The reason you're going to see the bottom is because our hamstring attaches there. So right at that fold, at the bottom fold there, where your Speedo bikini stops, Mike, right there at that butt, right there is where your hamstring attaches, and your hamstring is helping. And it's helping, and that's why it's so damn tight. Okay.
That makes all the
sense. Because it's constantly helps. So those stretching your hamstrings at, maybe 2022 they'll loosen up. Maybe 2023. Okay.
Yeah.
They're never going to loosen up until you fix the problem, which is your glute is not stabilizing your back.
That's big, because that's what we've seen with a few of the kids, at least that from my program. And I can relate this to again, touching on this, like the sequence as a hitter, right? So the first thing we work on is, again, the toilet sit, right? Hips come back first, the chest stays out, over the knees. Tibia stays at 90 degrees, and keeping the heels engaged with the ground. It's one of the biggest things, because I know this isn't taught a lot nowadays, but I still do hear it, of like telling hitters to be up on their toes, like be up on your toes as a hitter. And that's just so wrong. It's not even funny.
Yeah, I mean, we have an arch of our foot for a reason, right? And an
Right.
arch is supposed to compress into the ground. When our arch compresses into the ground, guess what we turn on? Muscles that are, what I find, are very little trained. That's our groin, dude.
Right.
When we push our
The
arch of our
adductor.
foot, our adductors, right? If we think of a building, we want to have our back on, our sides, and our adductors of the courtyard. That's what's holding us into stability. We want those on, helping us.
Yes.
So we want that foot mush, that arch compressed into the ground, turning on our groin, and not only kind of above the groin would be our pelvic floor muscles, right? Those have got to be on, holding us into place.
And that's why it's so important. You see hitters where they take when they start to go into load phase as a right hander, this is their back leg, right? This would be their front leg. Their back leg, when they start to step, this comes all the way back. You cannot keep your adductor engaged if you're on the pinky toe side of your foot.
Correct. And you'll see in golf, golfers too. It's called the reverse pivot. They'll get back and they'll tip over because the groin's not engaged, or they're not have that glute engaged, and that's why it's called a reverse pivot. Same thing in hitting. Same thing. And what you'll see hitting, what will happen usually, what I'll see is that knee will go forward and kind of what we call skeletally locked, which is essentially, I'm straightening my elbows. I'm skeletally locked, right?
And we see it like you start to add a linear momentum component to the hitting that you do not want. You want, if there's any momentum you want it all to be inside of this stable sort of little triangle, right? So that when you get back down, you can rotate off of it quickly with the core of your body. And so that's huge.
100%, my friend, 100%.
And that will get, if you work on just that thing as a hitter, keeping the arch side of your back foot, both feet, but really your back foot down, and keeping that angle, whatever it might be. It's bigger for some, depending on how wide your stance is, but making sure that your knee stays inside your foot and your adductor stays engaged, getting back down. And that's the trick that I've seen, Kevin, is it's fairly easy to teach kids to keep that there when they load, but keeping it there when they land as well, and not giving too much weight back is really important. If you just work on that, turning your belt buckle or your belly button to the pitcher, you'll see a major jump in your exit velocity, which means a major jump in your bat speed, and
100%
greater success for fastballs.
Yeah. So again, like, to sum up, do we like lifting things up and putting them down? Absolutely.
Lift things up and put them down.
It has to be done with precision. As far as I'm concerned, with adolescents, there's enough with body weight and bands. Like, again, perfecting the squat and the lunge, and then actually the transition of I'll do a series of movement. We all know the Karate Kid crane where we put up our leg, but that's the same thing a pitcher would do, right? So we want to be able to do crane to squat to lunge to crane to squat with as least movements as possible, right? And I've got film of that, and if people need more information on that, they can certainly contact us at info@proveitlive.com, that we have those. And as an athlete, again, it's like a high-speed camera of the movement, and we want to take out the pictures that aren't athletic and get someone to go to A to B without preparatory transitory movements that they don't need.
Right. And what that means, I'm assuming, right, Kevin, those frames that we want to take out, that's going from a stable position to an unstable to try to get back to a stable. And we want to go stable, stable, stable.
Correct.
Right. And that's huge.
We want to move from a position of power where we are anchored, we have a body part anchored, and we are loaded no matter what we're doing. Hitting, golf, tennis, swimming, a position where we're loaded to be able to explode back into a position where we're loaded to begin to explode.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And that's, we could talk about, a whole show about just deceleratory training, right? And we will. Because everything about how fast we can go. Well, Odell Beckham Jr. runs real fast, but he blew his ACL out because he doesn't know how to stop properly. Okay. Ran right across the middle, had no, you look how he blew that ACL, knee going over the toe, gone, right?
Yep.
Not in a proper athletic position, didn't sit back on his posterior chain, boom, blew his ACL out. And that we're seeing, why everyone talks about, hey, they blew their ACL in a non-contact injury. Yeah, because and you look at all of them and they're all the same. The body in a precarious position that they shouldn't be in. And I think the what's his face from the Pats talked about that, the receiver. Edelman talked about when he blew his ACL, he knew, he said, I was in a bad position.
He took a risk.
He took a risk. I shouldn't have been in that position, and I blew my ACL out. And the preventative side is being in good position. That doesn't mean you're slower. You're actually going to be faster. You have to have the ability to decelerate and then accelerate. And I just don't see that being trained in adolescence, and that's why the injury rate's through the roof.
All right. Good stuff, Kevin. Good stuff.
All right, brother.
All right,
well,
we got
I think I gotta kind of skedaddle off to continue this for our next show.
Okay. We've
got lots of built up. Why would you do that?
We got a why would you do that? We got some video breakdown. But looks like so you got to go to treat your patient.
Got to go fix the world, but we can stay tuned. But this is our 75th. Can you believe that already? 75, 75th. What started off as like a pandemic spoof,
right?
Has turned into 75 episodes. So thanks for listening, everybody.
Absolutely. Very cool. All right, Kev.
All right, brother.
Later. See you, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.